Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Josh Doring and Chris Brown in their correct boxes now. You can drag on Zoom now. It's lit, and I had forgotten that until about 7 seconds ago. So now Josh Doring in the blue is in the right spot. Chris Brown in the red in the right spot. Wild card weekend. First of all, having 3 games each day is just awesome, and just adding another game here makes it feel so much more full of a weekend, and you're starting at noon instead of 4, and it just kind of it makes it more action-packed, more exciting, and more games to talk about, which is the most exciting part of this. We're going to go through in chronological order based on when the games are played and do predictions. Then we'll go back and grade our confidence on that we have in the result of each game, and then by the end of the weekend it'll all be wrong, but it'll be awesome. Starting with a game that I wish was not thrown in as the first game on Saturday, like it wasn't that big of a deal, is Indianapolis at Buffalo. Indianapolis the 7 seed at Buffalo the 2 seed. Mr. Doring, is Bills Mafia going to win their first playoff game since 1995? Or are the Colts going to go play spoilers?
I got the Bills. I'm going to save most of my specific thoughts till when we get to our confidence level, but
Okay.
I'm not betting against the Bills at this point.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Likewise, I'm going with the Bills. This was a tough choice because I really feel like the Colts are a team that could play spoilers in the playoffs, but at the same time the Bills are this team that I'm just like I'm so high on right now. Obviously for obvious reasons of how incredible they've been playing. They're firing on all cylinders, and I wanted them. I think they're poised to make a deep playoff run. But this is the kind of team that could disrupt them. So I'll give more thoughts later. But this is going to be an interesting one. I'm with you in that I kind of wish it wasn't the game that was, the first one, as if it wasn't that important, because I think this could be an actually really competitive game.
I'm going with the Bills as well. They've been the most impressive football team in the NFL for the better part of the last 6 weeks. Until somebody beats them, I'm going to have a really hard time picking them to lose, and especially at home. I have questions about Phillip Rivers and questions about Phillip Rivers on the road in the playoffs, so I'll go with the Bills as well. In the middle of the afternoon on Saturday, Los Angeles at Seattle, the Rams, the Seahawks, an NFC West battle. Chris, who you got?
I have the Seahawks for this game, and I know we'll talk more about it in a minute because this was not an easy call for me. Well, I should put it this way. This was a pretty easy call, but at the same time, I think this could be a pretty close game, right? You have the questions with Jared Goff for the Rams and his status, and at least last I checked, it's still uncertain whether he's going to be going on Sunday or not. And then you have a Seahawks team that has concerns of its own, so it's sort of a question of maybe which concerns concern you more, or which strengths of these teams do you value more over the other, because they're in sort of a similar situation in terms of there sort of being an obvious reason to doubt each team. But I'm going with the Seahawks.
Josh?
I'm going with the Seahawks as well, but I'm right with you, Chris. I think this game's going to be close. This is not a good matchup for Seattle because of how good the Rams are on defense, specifically against the pass. They have shut DK Metcalf down in their 2 meetings already this season. And just the being familiar with this team, all of those factors play into giving the underdog an advantage. I'm still going to pick Russell Wilson, especially because we don't know if Jared Goff is playing, and I'm just not picking John Wolford to beat Russell Wilson in a playoff game. And Russell Wilson has also been very good at winning at least one playoff game in his career. But I don't like this matchup for Seattle.
You guys are thinking way too hard. It's either a banged-up Jared Goff or John Wolford against Russell Wilson. It's the Seahawks. This isn't this hard. I'm going with the Seahawks. Tampa Bay, Washington to end Saturday. This is even easier than the other one between Russell Wilson and John Wolford. You guys sound silly. It's John Wolford. The Rams lost to the Jets and the 49ers at home this year.
And the Seahawks lost to the Giants?
Okay, The Giants almost went to the playoffs. The Jets were 2-14.
And then,
The 49ers would have made the playoffs if they were in the NFC East.
Okay. I mean, what else? It's John Wolford. Why are you going to bat for John Wolford?
It might be John Wolford. It might be
Or
Jared
it's
Goff.
Jared Goff, who's been just as uninspiring. Tell me one good thing that Jared Goff has done this year, other than be largely unimpressive.
No, this is about their defense. Yeah.
Okay. They had 0 offensive touchdowns last week. 0. And the Seahawks defense has not given up more than like 17 points in like 7 weeks. So, Tampa Bay, Washington. This is even easier. This is the worst football team to ever make the playoffs. Who you got?
Tampa Bay.
Okay.
I'm saving my thoughts for later.
And also, you saying that this is a bad matchup for the best quarterback of all time against the worst football team ever to make the playoffs is also you overthinking things. Chris, who you got?
I have the Bucks as well. This was a very easy call, as we'll discuss when we get to talking about ranking our confidence in these picks. This was an easy call. There's one team that's better than the other in almost every aspect.
I'll go with the team that's got the best quarterback of all time versus the team that is the worst team to ever make the playoffs. Sunday, noon, Baltimore, Tennessee, in Nashville. Who you got?
I have the Ravens. I have the Ravens. This is going to be a fun game. This is one that we'll discuss in a minute. I'm not confident in the end result of this. There's simply, I think this game could be really close. You have this battle, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. But there's one big factor for me that I'll save to discuss in a second that I think is going to weigh in my decision and make this a call that I'm still somewhat confident in. But there's one deciding factor we'll get into in a second.
Josh?
I've got the Ravens. I've been high on the Ravens since they started getting back to closer to full strength and Lamar Jackson is playing quarterback again. Ultimately, this comes down to my lack of faith in the Titans' ability to stop anybody at this point. The Ravens rushed for over 400 yards last week.
Against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, right. The Titans' defense is better than that, but they have. I want the team that I have more faith in defensively, and also I want Lamar Jackson over Ryan Tannehill. I got the Ravens.
Well, I'll take the team that beat the other team on the road 28-12 last year, and the team that's not 2-4 against playoff teams not named the Browns. I seem to be the only person on the planet who's not impressed by the fact that the Ravens are 5-0 against the Cowboys, Browns, Jaguars, Giants, and Bengals. Couldn't care less. Couldn't care less that they're 5-0 against those 5 teams. They're 2-4 against playoff teams not named the Browns. It's in Tennessee, and Lamar Jackson, 12 points in an important playoff game at home. I haven't seen Lamar Jackson perform the way I want to see him perform in a big game. I just haven't. So I'm going with the Titans. This is the one I'm the most unsure about. These are 2 good football teams, and the Ravens, yes, are 5-0. So if nothing else, it means that they're confident. I still don't really care that they've played Jacksonville, New York, and Cincinnati in the last 3 weeks. I can put a Pee-wee football team together that can beat those 3 teams. But I've got the Titans. I'll go with the home team and the team that won this game last year. And, oh, by the way, has already won in Baltimore this year. So that's to start the day. That, again, another noon game that is way, way better than the game that is at 7:15. But in the middle of the afternoon on Sunday, Chicago, New Orleans, the 8-8 Bears, the 12-4 Saints. Who got? Josh.
New Orleans, don't need to think hard about this. Assuming somebody is healthy to play, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, even if they're both out, I would still probably pick the Saints, but I'm assuming at least one of them is going to be okay. This is Drew Brees versus Mitch Trubisky, and the proven team that's in the playoffs every year against the Bears. Give me the Saints.
Yep. Chris?
Yeah, going with the Saints. Easy call. I think this will be the worst game of the weekend. That's my prediction.
Agreed.
Drew Brees is not going out. There's reports that he may be retiring at the end of the year. He's not going out with a home loss to the Bears in the wild card round. It's not happening.
Fair.
That's it.
I'm right there with you. Browns, Steelers to end the weekend, to end wildcard weekend. Josh, who you got?
Steelers, primarily because I don't know who's playing for the Browns, and they don't really have a coaching staff. If this is the game, if it was full strength, I would probably pick the Browns. But they didn't look particularly good last week in a game that they absolutely had to win that the Steelers didn't, and still almost found a way. I'm a big Kevin Stefanski fan. You lost an all-pro offensive lineman. Denzel Ward is still on the COVID list along with other players. There's too many question marks.
Chris?
I want the Steelers as well, and I can sort of describe this pretty quickly, my rationale. The Steelers JV team basically almost beat the Browns last week. They're not putting their JV team out there again. If your JV team almost beats the other team's varsity, then your varsity is probably going to beat the other team's varsity team.
And a worse version of the varsity team, because now they don't have their head coach.
Exactly, right? So an easy call for me. No, I'm not saying I say an easy call, but I'm not saying that I think this is going to be a blowout either. This game could be very interesting, and I'm not writing the Browns off completely at all. It was a pretty simple rationale.
Baker Mayfield versus Ben Roethlisberger. I got no faith in Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has proven to me nothing that that instills confidence in the playoffs for me. And even though the Steelers have shortcomings, like they depend on their quarterback's arm too much, at least they're depending on Ben Roethlisberger's arm too much. And he and Mike Tomlin have done some respectable things in the playoffs, and it's still the Browns and it's still Baker Mayfield. And then you add the fact that you don't know who's going to play and who, and the fact that their coach is not going to be on the sideline, and that makes the decision pretty easy for me. Let's do confidence. I don't know how you want to do this. I guess we can just start at 6 and then go down.
Sure.
And go from there and see what we got. So we'll start with 6. Josh, who's 6 relatively speedily, please.
6 is least confident, correct?
Yes, 6 is least confident.
I went back and forth. I switched my rankings a bunch, but ultimately I landed on 6 as the Buccaneers. Look,
they're my 2.
What? This is the exact same story that was going into the same narrative going into last season against the Titans, right? Look what happened.
The Titans went to the AFC Championship game. The Washington football team is literally 2 games under 500. What do you want?
All I'm saying is that I have a feel of 2 things. One, I'm going to talk about the matchup because Tom Brady hasn't been pressured in weeks, and Chase Young is going to pressure him. And 2, I just have a feeling that because this is such an unfair situation for the Buccaneers, that Washington is actually going to show up and play really well, despite the fact that they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I still think the Buccaneers are going to win. I honestly feel pretty good about all 6 of these predictions. But after what happened to the Patriots last season, I just can't shake the feeling that Washington is going to make this way closer than it should be.
They needed the Eagles to make the most obvious tanking decision of all time to win that football game. They should have lost that football game.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts wasn't going to score a touchdown, though.
They're 7-9. It's the best quarterback of all time. You're thinking about it way too hard.
We'll see.
The Bucs in Washington, I would bet $1 million on the Bucs to win this football game. They are number 1 on my list, and it is not close. It is the Washington football team against a Bucs team that hasn't scored less than 31 points. If they pressure him, they score 24, and they win by 12.
Right.
Alex Smith is your quarterback.
The Washington's offense is a disaster. Tom Brady doesn't have to be Superman for them to win this game. Anywhere near it. He could be an average Joe quarterback, and they'll win this game by 20.
Oh.
Okay, not 20, but they'll win this game by 10.
Since when did you lose faith in Tom Brady? That's what this is. You have lost faith in Tom Brady. Since
when? To a certain degree.
Because he's been horrible this season?
No, that playoff game really scared me last season.
Oh, right. Okay. Never mind. I'll pick the 6 rings over the 1 football game. That's so stupid. Six on my list is Tennessee Baltimore. This is the football game that has the two teams that are closest together.
Yes, agreed.
And this, right. Baltimore has all the faith in everybody in the world right now. Everybody has faith in Baltimore after their 5-game win streak over 5 bad, okay to bad football teams. But they are playing well. Lamar Jackson and this team is healthy. So they're 6th on my list. And there's also some history there that you just have to throw some things out the window when you've had this recent NFL playoff history and these close games this year. So they're 6th on my list. Chris?
Yeah, I went with Ravens Titans 6 as well. I don't have too much to add on that. I think my prediction would be that this would be the game of the weekend in terms of competitiveness, in terms of potential back and forth, in terms of potential down to the final minutes. So yeah, I think this Ravens team is a team that I have been high on, in the sense of I think they could be a team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs. They could make a real run here. This is a Titans team that I have real defensive concerns about. They've allowed 78 points in their past 2 games. I mean, I have really significant defensive concerns about them. But of course, when you're putting Derrick Henry out there, that's a big factor that can change the game as well. But I think this will be a close one. I'm excited for it.
Number 5, Josh?
Seahawks, again, the Rams are going to be able to really bother DK Metcalf, which means Tyler Lockett needs to be the guy. I feel confident about all 6 of these picks. I'll take Russell Wilson still. That defense is playing better. John Wolford did some good things to the extent that I think he can keep them in this game. So I've got them at 5, and I've got the Steelers at 4, because I could see the Browns winning, but they're just at such a massive disadvantage. So that's my bottom 3.
Who's your 4th one? Sorry,
Steelers.
Steelers. I have the same. I'm right there with you. 5 for me is Rams. It is Rams, Seattle, followed by Cleveland, Pittsburgh. I think that's the way I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Chris?
I have the same. I will say, I'm just gonna throw in a little tidbit here, and that is that Seattle has never lost a home playoff game under Pete Carroll. Never. So just gonna throw that out there.
Yes, they are very good at winning this game.
3rd?
I've got the Ravens at 3 because of my concerns about Tennessee's defense, and because I'll flip the point about the Titans' recent success against the Ravens and say there are very few teams I would pick to beat the Ravens 3 times in a row in essentially what is a calendar year.
Sure.
They've done it twice. If it was the other way around, I would probably lean to the Titans in this game. But the fact that they did it in the playoffs last season, that is clearly going to be something that John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson are thinking about. Then they went and beat him again this season. It makes me more confident, because it's so hard to, when you're picking between teams as close as these two, it's so hard to just keep beating the same team. It makes me more confident in the Ravens, so I have them at 3. And do you want me to just finish quick, and then you can finish?
Go for it.
I've got the Saints at 2. I can't see Drew Brees losing this game. I think it's going to be the least competitive game of the weekend. And I have Bills at 1.
Okay. Wow.
Just because I have that much faith in what they are doing right now, I just cannot see a world in which it comes to a crashing halt in Buffalo in this playoff game. And again, I like the Colts. I think this is going to be a closer game than most of the other ones. It's one of the more intriguing matchups of the weekend for me. But that doesn't change my confidence in the fact that the Bills are ultimately going to come out on top.
Sure. Chris, your top 3?
Yeah, I have Bills over Colts as my 3. I share optimism about the Bills. They're a top 3 team in the NFL. They're firing on all cylinders at the right time. The Colts are 2-4 against opponents with a winning record this season. They don't have the firepower to keep up with the Bills. But if there is a team that is going to disrupt the Bills and make this interesting, it is the Colts. So that's why I have them at 3 and not higher. Bucks over Washington is my number 2. We've talked about this game a good bit. I don't have to say too much more than what I said before, and that Tom Brady doesn't have to be all that spectacular, all that great, even for me to have real confidence in them winning this game. We don't have to get into that again. And then one is Saints over Bears. Like I said, Drew Brees, if this is his last season, he's not going out this way. This Saints team is as well-rounded as you're going to find in the NFL. The Bears are not good. The end.
I have the Bills Colts at 3 because the Saints and the Bucks are playing bad football teams, and the Saints and the Bucks are good football teams. The Colts are a good football team. So and there's always somebody is going to win a road game. Somebody is going to do it. And I can't come up with a. You can put 11 Chase Youngs on the field. I can't come up with a way in which Washington wins that football game. And I can't come up with a way in which Mitchell Trubisky leads the Bears to a playoff win against the Saints in New Orleans. And I can't really come up with a way that the Colts win in Buffalo if Buffalo just performs anywhere near the way that they should perform. But this is also a Buffalo team that coughed up a lead to the Houston Texans last year, and a team that is a much better team than that team was. Don't get me wrong. But this is also uncharted territory to a certain extent for the Bills and for Josh Allen. So that's the one that I could at least find a way to convince myself that the Colts can upset that game. And there's also just this part of somebody's going to win a road game because somebody wins a road game every wild card weekend. And then I've got Saints, Bears at 2. And like I said earlier, Bucks, Washington at 1. Stumbling to win the NFC East is not impressive. And the Bucks have the best quarterback of all time. So that's my number 1 confidence level. Coming up next, we'll do AFC Championship, NFC Championship, Super Bowl predictions. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.